And we're live.
Hello,
Hello,
Yang Gang Book
hello.
Club.
Hi, guys.
Let's see. Does it have the thing up yet? We don't know if anyone's here yet. Hello, if you're here. Today we are joined by Curtis Bucker. Or you have it says Kurt. So do you go by Kurt or Curtis?
Yeah, my mom only calls me Curtis. Yeah.
Okay, Kurt Bucker. I don't know where. I think maybe on your email it says Curtis.
Yeah.
Kurt Bucker in the house. Woohoo!
Thank you guys
Thanks
for having me. I
joining
appreciate
us.
Yeah, thank you for coming
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. It's been really cool. I love seeing all your artwork on Twitter, and it was like super inspiring to me. And so I was so excited that we were able to do this month.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you
It's
guys.
hard to tell a story in such. Twitter's not a great place to be able to explain concept art and all that. So I was really happy that the book, I finally got kind of a draft version. It's really difficult to tell big, especially transmedia stories where you're not sure if you're talking about the board game or the book or the video game or which part of it, you know. So
yeah. We've got some people in the house. Erin has said hi. If
Hi,
you're here,
Erin.
say hi. I'm on the comments, so I apologize in advance. It's not going to be as good when Megan's on the comments.
I still don't have Wi-Fi, guys.
Cannot.
I still don't have Wi-Fi.
The internet, Megan debacle continues.
Yeah, Wi-Fi.
Governor.
Okay, no. Wi-Fi installation is still not essential, apparently. So.
Even though like half the world is relying on the ability to have Wi-Fi to make ends meet and survive.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's not essential.
We're making do.
That's where we're at.
We're lucky in Alaska because so much of the remote village system is off the grid. And so the ISPs here invested for the last couple decades in education. Telemedicine was huge in Alaska even 2-3 decades ago as it was just starting. So we feel pretty blessed to be kind of in the right spot for investment, or at least having a plan and knowing what Alaska might do to help long term.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
I guess
hello if you're here.
Yeah. I guess I never thought that's such a unique thing, like telehealth, because my husband, he just graduated medical school, so he's starting his residency, and he talks a lot about telehealth specifically with psychiatry, because there's a lot of like therapy now. But I guess that like makes sense in like like with Alaska, there are so many remote areas that telehealth would just be kind of like one of the first line. Like, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, very unique. A lot of times the hospitals are the hubs of the northern regions in Alaska. They're the cultural hubs. They're not just a hub for medicine. They're a hub for many things.
Huh. That's interesting. I've never been to Alaska.
Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, it's on my list. Yeah. It is. I've seen pictures and it's like gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were going to do this outside, but we're having a windstorm. I was going to put some mountains in the back. First time live on the internet. I was like, all right, let's do the mountains that are in our backyard.
Oh, man.
Oh.
Next time.
I know. You'll just have to come on again.
Yep. Amen.
Yeah. So if you're here, say hi. We've heard from Erin. Want to hear from the rest of you. Today we are joined by Kurt Bucker of BiFrost Bridge Studios. So, Kurt, do you want to get us started just by like giving us a quick intro to like who you are in your project and the studio, and kind of give us like in a nutshell before we dive into specific things?
Yeah. So BiFrost Bridge Studios in name and kind of roots comes from a traditional kind of Norwegian background. I mean, a lot of people probably think it's Thor and all the fun stuff going on in the Marvel universe, but we have a deep Norwegian heritage on my side, on my father's side. And the concept around connectivity, I've had a couple of careers in my life where my job was really focused on vision and connectivity. I was an architect for the University of Alaska system, and we had a whole bunch of remote satellite campuses that were one of the main projects was tying people in. And so I found that throughout my career, I actually have an interdisciplinary degree. I left social work really early on in my college career. I think I was Van Wilder level, maybe 7-8 years, multiple degrees. And I changed it from a Bachelor of Arts and Social Work to a Bachelor of Technology. It was at the last credit of my practicum. I was actually going into social work and they were bringing online systems for children online. And so I kind of changed into this social to science world in the academic way. And then here I am 20 years later. I've taken a small hiatus from IT, saw a lot of things in the last year around everything from artificial intelligence to security concerns, all these different things coming into the world that having neurodiverse children were coming in, from parenting side, they were coming in from the professional side, they were coming in from, a lot of things before the pandemic. This has accelerated all that, obviously. But the concept of BiFrost is that, especially from like a Thor, perspective, is like magic is science, right? We're just in a different, Midgard and Asgard are different. You guys consider science something different than magic. And so basically, as I was creating the other books, I didn't even have a studio yet. I've been writing for about 10 years with my kids. And when one of my best friends, Bob, mentioned that name, it just hit right away. And I was worried. I was like, man, the BiFrost with everything else that's going on with Marvel, that domain has got to be taken. But it wasn't. So it really represents connectivity and inclusivity. There's more worlds than Midgard and Asgard in the BiFrost, right? And so it's a concept that I wanted for being able to create that symbiosis and bring in people, especially younger generations. A lot of my writing over the last 10 years has been focused in the classroom, taking in feedback from my kids and their friends in their classrooms. And it's evolved. My writing started with like the Bunker Adventure that we'll look at was the first book. And it's evolved now into more of a preteen. So I've got 5 to 10 books that I'm rewriting. And then I've got this new project with Gaia Seed that's so pertinent right now. It's just so pertinent. And so that's where I'm kind of balancing time. That was probably a lot of rabbit trail. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's really cool. Yeah.
We've also got a special guest, extra special guest.
Hello.
His is in Curtis. And then we've also got someone from Michigan. Hi, Kim. Nice to see you here.
Hi,
Thank you guys for saying hi. If you're here and you haven't said hi, say hi. So that's so cool. I love all that, hearing the connectivity and that you're into interdisciplinary and stuff like that. And kind of, I guess, like coming from like the Yang Gang, like how is that like kind of contributed, or just like just your knowledge of tech and
so let's hit on that. What brought me to the Yang Gang? It was right around the time I was naming BiFrost Bridge. There was a lot of, I had to research very, very deeply into a field that was already an interest to me. A lot of security was going to an artificial intelligence front end, and my job for the last couple of years was kind of helping the mid-market and small to medium businesses prepare for digital modernization. And there's just no funding. So I saw a lot of these problems. I worked a lot with state and local governments as well. And so I just saw the lack of funding and the increased complexity, and the stress and anxiety just really increased around all that. And, when I took a break, it was a time to kind of research the technologies that I love and that I might take my career into. And so as I started looking at Gaia Seed, and the boys started telling me all these different ideas that they had, it really moved into kind of from what Joe Rogan was talking about with Elon Musk about a week ago. Can you give me, Joe Rogan kept asking, can you give me the step-by-step that gets us to whatever the futurists talk about, right? This digital consciousness, digital superintelligence, the tech singularity is what a lot of people talk about this point. And so, yes, we've got challenges right now, but when I thought about Gaia Seed and what my boys were asking me, and a lot of other feedback, I took a lot of feedback on that book. There was a couple of core elements around my passion, and one of them was trying to describe to a 10 to maybe 13-year-old audience, a preteen audience that was kind of scared. I started to pick up, is a robot going to take my mom's job or whatever? These questions started to come up a lot around automation. And unfortunately, 6 months ago, when I really started the book, a lot of those things were coming from a very dystopian angle. And now we're looking at technology and modernization to help us. And so it went in the last 6 months from only a few people looking at these things, maybe technologists at heart or people that really looked into science, trade rags, and things like that, and this concern and this idea that, oh, from the technologists, it's always going to be dystopian. Ask the academics, and you'll get a better understanding of how data science is going to affect the world. And so as I started popping back and forth between those two worlds, there was a lot of commonality. And then I started to notice that I had everything I needed to program Agnes, right? When I say program, the concept of Gaia's seed is that the future is not as dystopian as we think, but it is lining out a world over the last 80 years that very much took a digital superintelligence. Agnes stands for Artificial General Intelligence Neural Earth System. And so this is the system that was stood up to help humankind. I'm working on a lot of flashback animations to walk through these things, and because they're complex. And so the goal was to give them to a younger audience and show them not only a little less dystopian version, but show the control that we have as humanity in order to create bias amongst the machine learning in order to make Agnes a little more empathetic, a little more sympathetic. And it's such a charged world these days. When I was working with some of the people at the start to kind of conceptualize Agnes, because she's not the largest existential threat in the book. We actually team up with her. The heroes, the mystical component of this teams up with them. And I really wanted to get across that this is a balance between nature and technology, that we've gone too far in this book and we're coming back to an understanding that is more like Elon Musk's. Like, we're all going to be neurally connected. There'll be a neural link. But there's also a choice, right? And so there's a lot of fun stuff in the book. Like, humanity split into 3 different tribes, if you will. Those that followed Gaia when she left the Earth and left it to Selene to kind of find that Selene is her daughter, and she left the balance to a younger generation. Another big theme: a young generation has to figure out this hybridity, this symbiosis. She goes underwater. Anybody that follows her, they go through an adaptation to become more like merfolk, more like underwater beings. Those that don't want technology, they stay in all the human cities that are left behind. When Agnes comes to full digital consciousness and starts going through that exponential growth that a lot of futurists talk about when they kind of come online, she basically says, we have to leave so much of this behind, right? And it's not like a socialist. I'm not trying to bring politics or religion. I'm staying very careful to pull away from all those, because this is a much larger 10,000 foot view. But she comes in and says, we're going to abandon these cities and we're going to create new ones, and we're going to forest in this pattern, almost like the Matrix, when it was Neo talking about, well, that's the thinking of a machine, right? So when you look at the map of the Earth in 2099, it's like these gridded forests, right? Because Agnes understands that without oxygen, things aren't going to work. And so there's this very practical element to her, this mothering, nurturing element. And again, I have to be careful with politically charged things, but I could never figure out a way of saying it to somebody without saying, a big group of women programmed her, right? So, I think it was decided that men caused all the wars, so let's go ahead and let women program her. But I'm trying to break that down. I'm doing a course right now on computational social science and ethics and AI. And I'm trying to reach out to my instructors and say, hey, is this how you would see this progression? And how would there be alternate, less dystopian ways? And then how can we kind of influence through all of these flashbacks that Selene goes throughout the 7-book series to kind of show that there is a different way. So each time I look at articles coming out, and they're crazy right now. Microsoft's announcements this week, the quantum computing announcements this week. When you look at everything, it's like we're on the precipice of having the technology, the hardware, the software, and the data. Those are the kind of trinity of where data science goes. And now it's a worry of the world theater. Does China have better hardware? Does the US have this? Who has what? And I'm trying to write a book that kind of brings it to a more world stage and says, we have a chance to curate this data. Now that I've gone through a lot of algorithm study and I mean, just the study of male versus female, male equals programmer, woman equals what? When you put that into, data science projects and these courses I'm taking are phenomenal. You get access to IBM Watson, you get access to some of the cutting edge technology of the world. And when you go through the algorithm, it's really simple to show how humans can go, we're sorry that you came to that conclusion that a woman is a homemaker, right? I mean, take the AI for Everyone course. It's only like a 4-hour commitment to walk through this. We're sorry that the data, bias got you there from giving you an access to, human thought, if you will. we're going to go ahead and change that bias to where that is no longer something that propagates, right? And so that's a big part of it. That's one of the last pieces that I'm working on. I mean, I'm halfway through the script. I've got huge amounts of concept art, but I'm still focused on trying to get some time with Lex Friedman or some of these thinkers that could see this as a fun experiment, could pull back from the political hype of talking about the steps that lead humanity to AGI, because that's a scary thing, and just have fun with me in a fiction world with the goal of making it a less dystopian story. I can drone on for a long time. I'm going to give you guys a second.
Well, I was thinking,
I've been writing for 3 months in a cave, and then 3 months prior to a pandemic in a cave as well. So we've been having a lot of great thoughts. So go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, what Aaron's saying here, like directed towards preteens, I'm sitting here like, no, this is a story I want to read. Like, as a 26-year-old, like I'm just like, this sounds awesome.
Well, it's a lot of feedback. It's very female-led. There was a huge, even from the boys in the room, when I sat down with an audience of 12, 20, 30 kids, adults, whatever, there was a huge desire to bring, once I talked about the aspects of the story, it's a transmedia story. So I'd say, well, this is what my middle son's working on with the board game. This is what my youngest is working on with the kind of JRPG, 16-bit, it's very easy to program games like that. And then my oldest is helping me with the graphic novel. And we talk about those themes. And overwhelmingly, it was women are not represented well in video games, for sure. When the video game element came in, it was an even stronger ask. And so like all the romantic pieces of this, I had all brothers. I grew up mostly with, my father and 3 brothers. And then now I've got all boys. And my wife she's a tomboy, right? You can tell she designed my son's room back here. But so it's been very hard to understand exactly what does a young female population want from, the messages and how the romance should work and how the lead should work. And it comes in a lot. My developmental writer is constantly warning me because of these biases that come in. Gaia is the mother of the earth, and there's always been different perspectives of the father of the earth. And in this story, we took the Uranus kind of model. But Uranus, in a lot of the backstory of the concept of Gaia, abused Gaia in ways, right? Whether subjugation or power over her. And so, my son loves Godzilla. He loves the concept of the core of the earth and this nuclear energy that Godzilla would consume. And that's how he could quick travel from Atlantic to Pacific, all that. And so we just made Uranus a dragon in the middle of the earth, and he doesn't leave there. It's not an imprisonment, but it's his atonement to Gaia for all the things that have gone wrong. And so it's subtle, all these small things. My son will tell me, I want an Indiana Jones-like character that looks just like me, that is Uranus's human form that helps to guide her dad, but really her main guidance is coming from other areas. But he just wants atonement and wants to be beside his daughter, if you will, this magical creation. She's not human. She's the kind of the daughter of the earth. And so those things come in really strong. And I try to listen as much as I can. There's always concern around the audience and age and what I can put in and how that offends and affects people. But I try to stay clear of that and look on a dev writer to give me feedback on that. She's awesome.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So how big is your team now? Because I'm a little familiar with like the model that you're kind of working with, but some people might not be. So you outsource different creatives and creators. So can you tell us about how your team is working?
Fun, absolutely, yeah. So when I left employment, months ago, I started to realize the capability on programs like Fiverr. I use Fiverr pretty exclusively. It gives me access to just so much talent. And then by January, the talent had doubled. And then by February, even more so. And there was so many people. I mean, I have editors that work for UC Berkeley, as assistant professors. I have my team to start with is all over the world. That has been a little challenge when I went to go look at how these programs could potentially help a business that I started in November, even though we have no income coming in. So that like the PPP doesn't really affect me, but think of all the contractors I'm paying. And so I was just joking about it yesterday with someone. I have 198 gigs on Fiverr. spread across over 100 people. And I started doing the quick math, and there was about 3 or 4 dozen countries. And so I'm actively usually working with a half dozen or more different countries on different time zones and things. And so it's really cool. You got to be careful because I'm writing 5 books right now. It helps with my anxiety to kind of direct and hop between, and I don't want to do this right now. This makes me happier. I'm more creative here. My boys want a whiteboard here. And so my brain works a lot differently from a neurodiversity perspective. I've never gone in for diagnosis because of fear in the employment realm. In November, I signed up for UW Medicine to go in and do an autism assessment to see if I'm like really high functioning, or, my youngest and oldest is diagnosed with autism, and my middle son has some sensory processing disorders. And I've always wondered, from a genetic perspective, you do tens of thousands of pages of reading on autism, and you just wonder more than anything. There aren't a lot of answers. And so UW Medicine was backfilled months. And then by, the pandemic, I don't know if I'll ever get there in 2020 to go through adult autism assessment, which is really complex. But it's evolving a lot, but it's just, it's a lot more accepted now. You got that mini hub of technology, not many any longer, but Seattle's a huge hub of technology. And apparently I was shocked when I called that there were hundreds of people in line behind me, just trying to figure out, really, when I talked to her about it, she was asking the intake person, like, what's the main focus? And it's really, for me, probably, I imagine for a lot of other people as well, it's acceptable now to go do this type of assessment from a work perspective, not worrying about, the labeling and things like that. And more importantly, I think it'll teach us where we can fit properly into employment a little better. It's made me a lot more comfortable going through a lot of self-assessment and realizing that strengths bring weaknesses. The Colby Index is amazing for just figuring out, like, I'm an initiating fact finder. No, fact-finding quick start. I love to do research, and I love to jump on top of things and create and vision and I guess direct, and which created a lot of issues with me because I was like, oh, right, well, I felt lazy a lot because I get overwhelmed with all these follow-ups. I mean, try working with people all around the world in different time zones and things, and I'd be like, well, I don't want to do that right now. And that can create a lot of anxiety and feelings, self-doubt and things like that. And so this has been a journey. I left technology to get healthier, and writing was a byproduct of that. And it allowed me, BiFrost is a byproduct of me wanting to, if I'm ever successful enough to put a foundation under our family, it's a very important term right now, this foundation, the safety net, because we're living all on retirement right now. We're investing everything in this kind of transformational thing for the family. And if not, I'll go back, not to the place I was before, but probably more artificial intelligence, ethics, CSS, computational social science fields. But I don't want to necessarily go back. And so it's a weird place right now where I'm trying to figure out what projects might be the most important to provide stability for my family. As soon as I knew there was a foundation underneath us, it would reduce a lot of fear, reduce a lot of the type of things that keep you from being creative. And so to your original question around the world with BiFrost, back to that, one of my favorite things is just getting new perspectives from everybody around the world and just asking them, how are things going in your world? And it's been great because our mantra at BiFrost is no stress. I mean, I had some pretty severe health impacts from letting stress ravage my body and my mind. And we established that, credo, if you will, months and months before the pandemic. And now that the pandemic has hit, it feels like not only can I do a lot of good things for people, it'd be great if the government would maybe support that through the PPP and things like that. But as contractors, it feels really good to provide work to people. And I try to provide a lot of creative freedom. I'm in a concept art phase, and I come from an IT world where X.X.X revision is okay. And that's very taboo, I'm finding, in the publishing world. Like me pushing out my book for free on Monday or Tuesday or whatever it was. The intent there was to get feedback. Talking about autism and neurodiversity is very taboo. It can be very hard because a lot of parents, their kids may be affected in different ways. And what are you saying by this? And language is, I had to put it through 4 editors to talk about different language. And all of them were really nervous. Like, hey, I don't have autistic children, so I don't know what. And then me and Jenny finally came to a place, my wife and I, and we just wrote it ourselves, regardless of, maybe the developmental writers' concerns around being more neutral with wording. And so a lot of ways, I just released a beta book. And so I know you can't publish things with the same name, but I'm just going to call it The Bunker Adventure 2.0 and 2.1. If I go even further, I've looked at the 2,200 words and said, I think I can say that in 1,000, right? So I think I could take the audience down to where maybe 5- and 6-year-old children would want to listen to the story versus maybe a little older audience. A 20-minute audiobook, even with animation that I put in there to engage children, that can be a stretch for a young child. And my intent of the book is to show this is how you can create worlds. This is how people can hear your voice and help you express it a little differently. I think I answered 4 questions at once. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's really great. You're like everything you're like talking about. And for those of you who don't know, we've been kind of communicating with Kurt for, I don't know, almost the beginning of the book club. We've been, in communication. So we're really excited to be able to work with him. And so hearing you talk about it, because you email with people and some of the passion comes through, but then hearing you talk about it yourself, I feel like makes it that much more special, if that makes sense.
It's nice to be able to flow and talk about things without a character limit or an email or what. Am I going to flood them? I don't want to send 2 pages, so this is awesome.
Yeah. And the fantasy thing, there's just no way you can convey that in an email. So that's what I was really looking forward to is I love fantasy. So digging into all of that. I mean, I just want to say, I think it's,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say really quick, I just think it's so cool. I love that it's, you say transmedia. So the fact that you have novels, picture books, computer game or a video game, board games, you're doing all of that stuff, right? Yeah. And it's all interlinked. Yeah. So I just want to make sure people are fully aware, that's what you're working on. And I'm just we've been just getting
really cool.
Think of Star Wars, think of all the comics, graphic novels, Funko Pop toys. Transmedia is very, very well done by large companies. And now that I didn't do it on purpose. These things fall into my lap. I write my children's books, if you will. I've never written anything specifically for myself. Now I put messages in. My kid wanted, we talked about some of the messages in Gaia Seed. And my message, the strongest piece was, let's let a younger generation handle this. That's why I'm still reaching out to Dave Matthews, trying to give him an opportunity to listen, and maybe I could use his lyrics or even his song Come Tomorrow. If you listen to Come Tomorrow, it's about a younger generation taking over without hurting the feelings or diminishing what an older generation has done. We live in a time of monumental change, and it's very important to get ideas from a neurodiverse audience right now. When you listen to Eric Weinstein and some of these other, big thinkers around technology, there are a lot of their comments are, now's the time to not suppress a neurodiverse set of thinking. It's the time to really embrace it. I mean, this is historical. Somebody might look back at this live stream and it could be, it could be picked apart from a historical perspective, not just because of my books. There's a lot going on right now. And because of mass storage capabilities, we're recording all of this. This is all going to be documentary capable in the future, right? And so we really have to enable good voices. And that's, again, the core of Gaia Seed is the 10 to 13-year-old audience. In the next decade, it's going to take a while to get programs in place and understand how the new world works and these new economies and the industrial revolution's coming, already here, obviously. There's a huge change coming. And in order to prep, it's probably going to take about 10 years to get to a point where we're looking at a 2.0 rev. What did we do wrong? A lot of things are going to be put in place very rapidly. And that generation that this book might be helping to give a less dystopian, to soften the blows. I don't want them to have to read Forbes for their first introduction to AGI. I mean, some of the things that you read these days around human level artificial intelligence, especially with the stuff with Microsoft this week, where they've dedicated, the 5th largest supercomputer in the world now is dedicated to AI and things like that. you've got to give kids, you know, to their benefit, if they'd watch Satya and how he explains it versus other people trying to find a way to piggyback and create dystopian, you know, likes and things like that. A lot of the brilliant thinkers in the academics, they have a very, very positive future. And that's where I'm trying to really focus these messages on positive futures for the technology piece.
Yeah. It's so interesting too, because, you know, because Harry and I do like to talk about fiction, you know, because I feel like with a book club and especially within the nature of the Yang Gang, everybody's like, oh, nonfiction.
Yeah.
But you can get a lot of like really good information from fiction books. I think I did a tweet. I think it was last week. I don't know. Time's weird. I think it was last week. And I said, what if dystopian like authors are from the future trying to warn us, and we're just like, oh, girl with braid and boy named Bread fall in love, how cute. You know? And it's like, but it's true, you know, what you're doing is a fiction book and a fiction series, but it's based on very real concepts and very real concerns.
I never expected them to be this quick as well. Megan, your comment is, it's really close to home, because, you know, there's several pieces that are tied into these 3 phases of the fall of humanity, is what I've called it originally. And the first is built around the concepts of like personal digital assistants, which are coming in the next, well, they're already here, but they're going to be pretty popular in the next 12 to 18. Without going into huge definitions, watch Her, right? Your phone says, hi, I'm not Siri any longer. Who do you want me to be? Who's your avatar? I'm doing an animation on this right now, showing it from a kid perspective of this is the start of how humanity first asked technology to do more for them. And the next concept is social media as as your primary form of communication, right? So we have a limbic system and a cortex system that manages our world, and our tertiary system is now social media. We have, I mean, all of us are cyborgs. Everybody is pretty comfortable with that concept now, right? So our phone has linked us out to a social presence. So our tertiary consciousness is now in social media, potentially making very important decisions and influencing the world before we even talk to people. So that primary from there. And the last is a little more dystopian, but it's going to happen because the investment right now is so massive in AR and VR. And it's augmented reality and virtual reality. And so we give away a lot of freedoms. We retreat back behind social media, and then essentially we move to escape from a world if it doesn't get better. Now, these things don't have to go this way, but the futurists and the technologists all see these common elements. And those are easier because they're the next decade. When I get to part 2 and part 3 of the animation, explaining AGI, explaining digital consciousness, explaining the tech Cold War, I wasn't expecting the tech Cold War concepts to come in this soon. I expected them to be in the periphery of what I read in the science and the you know, to read about 5G. I mean, that's all that we were talking about before I left technology, was 5G as a way of revolutionizing the world. And then it became conspiracy theories. And it is eerie how much of a technology world and what I'm writing about are constantly bombarding me. They even become a little anxiety, like, oh my God, this is so pertinent right now. How quickly can I publish this? It's happening so much quicker than I thought. And these aren't all bad things. They're just like, you know, like a lot of people say, 10 years and 10 weeks, right? And we have to accept that from a hype cycle, if you're familiar with Gartner and new technology and things like that. In the past, we would hype technology before we would make it mainstream. And what happened is so much of the technological innovation, in my opinion, in the last, you know, couple decades or whatever, just decade, has been around social media, been around psychology, been around algorithms and artificial intelligence and things like that. And so we've made all of these technological leaps forward, but nobody was ready to talk to the world about this stuff's already here. We just haven't deployed it yet. And so like smart buildings checking temperatures, you read about those 6 months ago and people were like, no way, that's totally against privacy. All these Siemens buildings, you'd read articles about Siemens standing up all these smart buildings all over, and people just weren't ready for them. The companies that would inhabit those buildings or whatever, they'd say, no, we can't do that to our employees or whatever. Your floor might allow it, but our floor doesn't. We're not allowed to track people's progress. And that's what it was before. Now I fear it's all for COVID, right? Whereas before it was progress tracking of people. How much are they on Facebook? They can see the temperature changes in the cranium, and so they can tell maybe dopamine's being injected and you're on social media. Like it gets, and then you sound crazy talking about that stuff 6 months ago. And now it's like, now we need a better utopian story around those topics. Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nuts. It's nuts. I just have to say though, I think getting back to the, bringing it back or linking back in the fantasy element.
Yeah.
I think it's just so interesting what you're doing is going to become so much more mainstream. I think, or I hope, because now more than ever, like fantasy and science fiction, first of all, I think they're going to start to come together in more ways than they ever have before.
Yeah.
And also they actually, like, I feel like they hold a purpose now. Like, and I think what you're doing, like, shows such a great example, because this is the time, like, we have this beautiful time right now where we can play with these ideas, and like, we're like, we are in the wheel, whether you're a technologist or not, like whether you're just someone like, for me more, I'm not a technologist, but I like think creatively. So, it's like we have these opportunities to like think these things now and like think these through and like design the world how we want to before things get too out of hand. And I love that what you're doing is like showing a positive
and the
version of
connectivity part is critical. Like, what are the new mediums that we have that are safe for a younger generation to have a feedback loop? So I had a lot more feedback loops when the kids were in school. And now it's one of the reasons why I moved to Twitter and Facebook for all the sketches. I finished the protagonists and I've laid down the story, working through the script, but the antagonists are not that critical outside of a few because they're all constructs, right? They're either coming from Agnes, an automated AI, cyborg, robot, android. There's a continuum there, right? Or they're coming from this larger existential threat, which is Agnes wanted to be human, really wanted to be human. You program her to admire and love and care for humans. And then she wants some of these emotions that, even if you put supercomputing, or quantum computing behind it, you might not be able to attain. So she wanted this. So she put a kind of second in command in charge of biomechanical research, and then left it alone, what they call an unsupervised model. You'll read a lot about that in AI right now, and just let this entity run unsupervised. And as a part of that, you get a lot of experimentation that he started doing and things like that. And so the larger existential threat breaks off very early. And then you realize, oh, this is about humanity and technology, Agnes and Gaia, and then enabling Celine to literally fight against a larger existential threat. And that is important because then it's not vilifying the technology, it's showing the capability. Like Agnes and Gaia getting together make it to where the Tree of Life can do imprints. They bring technology into the Tree of Life to where the characters in the story can go through, I don't know, the Thor's hammer concept, are you worthy? They can earn the ability to just touch the Tree of Life through an interface, and they merge. Well, this is the first one I did, right, for the book. So they merge, imprints.
That's
and what I realized when I was at the Mopop I was at the in Seattle at the Museum of Popular Culture, and their section on tattoos around the world was bustling. This is pre-COVID. It was about January, December time, pre US taking it seriously. And there was just people everywhere. And there were so many kids. And I sat there for about 30 minutes, just people watching how many parents not only had ink, but were, showing their kids, and their kids were talking about, can I get one before I'm 12? And they were like, well, this is a very personal expression. They were having very mature conversations with their kids. And they were reading the Japanese take and the pirates and the Navy and everything. There was all these displays everywhere talking about how these important mythological and all these different things came in to bring that culture. And I realized, man, younger generations really love ink. And I'm 39 today. It's my birthday. And this was my second tattoo in the last 3 years, but that's it. Like, it was very taboo in my generation. So I smoothed it down. I didn't want parents getting, worried that I was promoting that, but this was a huge, it's probably the most popular concept that the kids would give me feedback on. And it was that they wanted these imprints. And it was so cool to work with tattoo artists. And I created, over 100 different small tattoos. They're in the art book, and they each tie into mystical powers. And so you just imagine like Rydia from Final Fantasy VI coming up. Instead of calling beasts, or instead of having these calling functions, this is my son, he loves the JRPG side, my youngest. He's like, Dad, we need to have power that comes from these glowing tattoos on them, you know, and they can call things, and they're specific to the character. My oldest wanted a biomancer and a paleontologist. And so, you know, there's Kalik is basically an android that collects dinosaur DNA from around the world so he can create biomancy and call dinosaurs to fight. So you've got to be careful when you have a neurodiverse audience blasting ideas at you. You're going to get so much, and you want free association. You don't ever want to turn that faucet off. And so the good thing to have is a whiteboard behind you. And even kids love it if you'll write their things down. And if they are so counterintuitive to the book and they just can't fit, which is, this one's easy because I said all mythology kids, right? This island, Antarctica, melts off. The human race has been enslaved, basically not enslaved, but the human race has been subjugated. The tree of life has now exposed itself. We now understand that from Antarctica, there's been this lush garden continent, if you will, underneath it the whole time. And this is how the myths and legends and religions and all these aspects of our world have been bumping into our timelines, in and out, right? We have Haitian voodoo in there. The kids wanted, I have a paladin lich, like talk about a dichotomy, you know, the yin and yang there. He's from, you know, Elric is from Arthur's, you know, round table. And he was you know, I didn't want to mess with history. So I'm like, he's just a little Padawan, right? He's some small knight. He loses his soul, giving up his soul to a lich for his daughter and wife. And so wanders the earth for 1,000 years or whatever until he finds a bigger cause. And so these are where all the ideas come in, like Haitian voodoo. That one, I did not expect Juju to be like a character in there. So that's awesome. and then I get all these ghostwriters to give me all these historical concepts, and we have fun with it. Like Matsu, she's a cyborg samurai. You've got some mystical Bushido elements in there, but Matsu is actually the Matsu Valley where I live. The Matanuskis sit in the valley, and it's also, you know, got deep, you know, mythological lore. So it's having fun. I can see people reading it in its draft version and being frustrated maybe with all the ideas everywhere. And that's why I started with a concept art book. You know, I figured 50 pages of art and illustration and narration would better tell, you know, a very complex story. So anyway.
Right.
That's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. Yeah, no, it's just so cool. And I'm just so excited to see how it develops.
Yeah, for sure. I think we have some comments, Kateri.
Yeah.
Sorry. So let's see. We have Curtis 39 today. Woohoo! Let's all say happy birthday in the comments. Let's see. And then also another special guest.
That's my mom. Hi, Mom.
That's awesome.
Hi, Mom. Cool. Someone's already excited to read it. Yay. Nice.
Yeah, the art book should be,
cool.
I wanted it ready a little earlier, and it's still in beta form. I don't believe in releasing things and being worried about a spelling error. Well, anybody that follows me on Twitter can see that. But
there's no edit button.
Not mistakes, not little accidents, right?
Yes.
Keep that as your premise, then you don't have to worry about everything you type, right? So so I'll have it ready on Monday. Anyone who wants it before Monday, there was some final copy edit and things like that, and I worked really hard. Well, this book is to send out to a lot of collaborators. It's this concept art book. You know, whether I take a Kickstarter route, whether I take a loan at a low interest rate with what's going on right now, as I boot this into its next version after the graphic novel comes out in August, you know, you reach a point where retirement and personal investment and everything aren't wise any longer. And so these art books were to send out to collaborators, more people that inspired me, and they're not asking for anything specifically. It's very hard to draft a letter like that. Like, do you like this concept? Do you want to be a part of it? But I just feel so free in this new career to do cliche and weird things that I wouldn't have done before. Like, I have no problem sending this book to Jack Johnson and telling him, like, I so want you. I mean, can you think of a better way to come into a story about hope and that is going to start a little dystopian than having Jack Johnson start off?
I love Jack Johnson.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this came from when I went and saw Elton John in Vancouver. I was sitting in the audience, and I was literally typing about, I don't know, for about 30 minutes on my phone, because so many ideas for Gaia's Seed was coming at me, because Elton John was doing his farewell. And he was literally saying, not only giving, but saying, I want all of my creative energy to go out into the audience right now. This is my last hurrah you know, I'm enabling all you people. And like, you know, you don't want to get too spiritual, but like I felt it. And I was like, just going crazy on my phone with people staring at me like, really, you're going to do that at a concert? And yeah, when the ideas come, they just flow and you got to go with it. And so I'm going to write a letter to Elton John and see if, you know, maybe he'll throw some lyrics in there. Maybe he'll just smile and like the idea. The world needs good stories right now. And I think there's a lot of platform for other people to spread those. So I'll just focus on creating them, and maybe I'll get lucky with someone that wants to spread them. We'll see.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, well, we'll keep spreading the word. I mean, beyond our neurodiversity month for sure, because it's just so cool to watch it develop.
Yeah.
So you have the Bunker Adventure is like the completed beta novel was released on YouTube, right? That's kind of where it's at.
The Bunker Adventure was the first book I wrote, and I started off with literally what sparked all this. The first page talks about walking past their little playroom. You know, we had a house that was kind of built around a central room, so we'd always be, you know, around that room, and it had, you know, little, you know, closable French doors or whatever they call it. So the kids could just go wild in there and do whatever. It wouldn't spill over into the living room. And you'd hear things all the time, and I'd walk past, and they were loud, and they'd giggle, and they'd talk in their own language. I mean, that's one of the reasons we knew early on, with Luke, that he was going to need some extra help. Is he started just talking in his own language at around 2.5. He just started making up words. And that has persisted in some ways between my kids. There are different levels of impact, high functioning autism, whatever. But the way that they communicate together, and that's why I love the concept now of neurodiversity, because I feel like there's a lot of work that's written specifically for understanding and accepting maybe a neurodiverse child, but there isn't the mix of everybody together that is neurotypical and neurodiverse, and how to understand and how to interact. And so in the Bunker Adventure, I took a risk being so wordy, but those were my children's types of expression. Like, I want it to be said very literally that I think this way or whatever. And so that's where some of the wordiness came. And that's why it's a beta version, because I feel like it's truer to the message that me and Jenny, I mean, if I'd show you our book, it's not crayon. I always had a relative of mine do airbrushing for the cover. So the cover always looked like, whoa. And then he opened it, and my kids would show me the drawings that they'd want. And sometimes they'd feel confident enough to color them. Other times I just sketch them. And sometimes they'd have me full on do the illustration. And so it allowed them to kind of tell a story. And so this first book is really important because it's about how it all started, right? And then I have about a dozen other books. Half are our own intellectual property. That's what I'm calling the Autism in Alaska series. They're written as like social stories. If you're familiar, I think, Kateri, you said you'd worked with some younger children around with developmental disabilities, correct?
Yeah, kind of a mixture of that, you know, different things. And then I also work with a woman who publishes children's books.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Which are not neurodiversity. They're more ecological, racial, but without being like it's a kid's book, you know. But she writes about her childhood in Africa.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that.
So I dip into a lot of different things. So to your comment about bringing neurodiversity and neurotypical together, it's like to me that's where it's at. Like that's what you got to do.
And it's so much territory too, because you're saying things that some people, you know, a lot of people will keep their, and you get a lot of withdrawn families because of the fear of being judged around how their kids will interact with others. But there's a lot behind that to unpack. But if you can encourage more, because we've been encouraging it for our whole life, and in the classrooms, we've been so blessed in the school district. I was so happy to see the Wall Street Journal write up the Matsuboro School District on like this, you know, this perfect kind of transition to all this, because we have had it's all about the people supporting Luke at school. We were going to move. I mean, I work in technology. I could have gone anywhere to these specialized schools, but it was around a school that was willing to accept and integrate Luke. And he's mainstream at this point and has been for many years. And well, he just made all sorts of awards graduating his 8th grade. I mean, so many awards, I couldn't even list them. It's crazy. And so that enablement and that integration will help other people understand how the neurodiverse spectrum works, because you can't just read a book. There's so many different things. And I think what it takes is a lot of patience and, you know, empathy and sympathy and just understanding, you know, just kindness. I think it all boiled down to kindness. And the more our schools can encourage that, the better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, so in the article, I'll quickly plug the article we released this week, because we are, we've released two so far, which I don't, if you've read them, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But we'll link them. And the last one that we just released was more about like misconceptions, or that was like in the title. And she talks about how, like, you know, the problem is not with the neurodiverse kid who's, you know, having trouble relating to their surroundings and their environment. The problem is with the environment. Like, the environment needs to understand how to make that, you know, what they're trying to do, like, be, you know, their struggle be okay. And then it won't be a struggle anymore. It's like, the answer lies with the environment, not with the kid.
And going into your kid's classroom and helping the whole class write a book or take their ideas down. I mean, we started when Luke was in kindergarten. Well, he was in a child find program for the disabilities, but we started really early. My wife's a chocolatier, and so she is also a substitute teacher. She was volunteering so much in the kids' class. She just became a sub, and she would mostly stay with our kids and then with her friends and teachers that she made friends with to kind of help out. Teachers' lives are, man, they're chaotic. They get so little time to run errands and do appointments, and the lack of subs is crazy. And then of course she's going to be the favorite, right? She literally runs like a 2-3 hour chocolate making class with kids from first grade all the way up to fifth grade or whatever. And so it's been very easy for us to bring a positive environment and bring this into the classrooms to where, if anything, I think it highlights where our family stands and how we at least treat each other. We very much bring that into the classroom. And I think it gives a good example for younger kids that have just never been around people with disabilities, and, you know, just simple things like being more patient when talking and listening, which I could obviously use. So
you're our guest. You can talk.
We want you here so you can talk. And Robin was just on one of our last streams. I forget, was it the most recent one, Megan?
I think so.
Talking about dyslexia and
ADHD
with kids with dyslexia and ADHD.
I have a family member with dyslexia.
She agrees.
That was really great to watch, because you'd figure from all the reading that I do on just sensory processing disorders, right? As you lump them together to create diagnoses in a lot of cases, I'd understand dyslexia better, but I still have a lot of misconceptions and just not a lot of facts, even with a family member. And then I realized the way he explained it to me a few months ago when we were on vacation was very different than the way I had heard it as well. And I wanted to follow up with him, because I'm starting to realize I'm huge on continuums, right? That's all IT is. There's never black and white, right? So I just bring a continuum into everything and say, okay, well, whereabouts are we? And it really broadened the continuum of understanding what dyslexia was. So that was one of the best hours I've ever spent.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm sure she's very glad to hear that.
We're glad to hear that, but I'm sure she's very glad to hear that. But she's just on behalf of Robin. Very
I could
cool.
speak for her.
You can speak. Thanks.
I can speak for her.
Great. I feel like, wow, that's like, we just covered so much.
I know.
Yeah. No, it's really great. I'm curious to know if anybody who's here right now, if you gave a look at we dropped the link, I think it was yesterday, for the YouTube video that we were talking about. If you guys did take a look at it, it's the bunker adventure that we were talking about. I'd be curious if you guys have seen it, and if you have, what your thoughts are. Drop them in the chat, because I watched it earlier and I thought it was really cool. I learned stuff. I learned
very
stuff.
much about ocean creatures. It was a mixture of, my kids would live underwater a lot of times, and so I was wondering who all was this going to appeal to. It's very hard to figure out when you put something out like that, like what audiences are going to appreciate it. And boy, the ocean audience is definitely there.
So. Oh yeah, the ocean. Yeah, everybody loves the ocean. And I liked, my favorite part was about the narwhals. I think narwhals are like the coolest.
So, a lot of whales in Alaska, so I had to thin when we were going through it. They had so many whale friends. I'm like, all right, let's do a crab here, So.
It was really cool. Now I did have a question. Have you been to all of those places?
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah. So because I traveled for a living, pretty much, I'd say about a third of my life was spent on a plane or in a hotel room or with a
Yeah.
client. There's a large need for architecture. I worked as design and architecture, and that hadn't gone remote yet. You still wanted a person in the room. IT has a really high failure rate, right? So there's a lot of want and desire to stamp things on a whiteboard. And so with all that travel came all the mileage and all the car points and hotel points and all that. And so I would go on an alone trip with each of my 3 children each year. And then we go on a family vacation as well, because there was so much points. I mean, there were times where I remember flying to Reno, Nevada for 3 hours to stamp a whiteboard and fly home to Alaska. And so you just rack up amazing amounts of credit for vacations. And so, and it was my way of escaping back then when I wasn't as in tune with stress and anxiety and understanding what I was going through. That was my way to kind of shut off the world. And so our vacations were epic. I mean, we'd have social stories built out. Not so much planning to where it was not fun. I learned those lessons early on, but my kids are just, and you also have the Alaska containment thing. You let them out in the world and they're like, whoa, everything's new. Why is the sun going down at 6 and things like that? And then my son, my oldest son loved aquariums. And so each of our trips for the first few years were to aquariums, and he would just he would sit in front of the glass at the Monterey Aquarium, which was probably from an artistic perspective, my favorite. In Central California, he'd sit there for 6 hours. And so our vacation was me sitting on the steps of, some dais while he's at this, and he's just recording everything in his mind. And a lot of people on the spectrum, there's a lot of equine therapy, there's a lot of animal type of therapy. And so I learned to look and understand a little more of what was going on. Like the seals were constantly swimming around him. And then finally, after the second, probably or third trip, we were in Hawaii, and a caretaker for the turtles came out and said, "I've never seen the turtles do this before. They love your son." And we were feeding them broccoli, and they're like, "Why don't you come in the back?" And so then I started doing a lot of integrating them into wildlife scenarios, because I'm a scuba diver and I always wanted to dive with them, but that didn't seem possible at the start. And so more and more of my world, and I tried not to push the love of the oceans on them and just embrace what they take naturally. And just more and more and more, we'd travel. And I started making social stories prior to the trip to show them everything we were going to do to help them with meltdowns. And then I just turned it to the end of the trip. Let's talk about where we've been. So that's what a lot of the rest of the books are. Now, I got to be careful because I'm being creative with them. The second book was about building a cabin. They wanted to know how I built cabins when I was younger, and then their grandfather was building one. And so they wanted to build their own. And so we built a social story that's a step-by-step play of go get the materials. You got to save your money. You got to work together. You got to have a plan. Very dry. And so I sent it out to a creative lab. I'm so used to working in that world. I sent it out to a creative studio in Russia because their art was phenomenal. And I gave them complete creative freedom. I said, you understand what I'm trying to do here with autism? It's a social story. Go ahead and do whatever you want. And they came back and it was all animals. And they were all building like this central cabin for all the animals to live in. I'm like, cool. So I get that one back in a week or two. So there's some works that I have that I don't even know their title or their content. So, yeah.
Nice.
Wow. That's
yeah,
super cool.
you give them outlines as a director. You're kind of just saying, here's what I want to do. Oh, Kevin. I haven't talked to Kevin in forever.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for stopping in. Yeah. Imaginative. It appealed to me as a neurotypical adult. I could imagine the way this affected the boys. I'm sure they see the story as a testament to their worldview. That's so special. Yeah. I love
Kevin is
special. Yeah. No, I mean, as someone who works with children's picture books, I love the model of that book. Like there are so many things that are tied in. And I even I've taken a course in children's picture books that was from an ECE perspective. And they had a whole unit on the beauty of kind of interdisciplinary in a way. Like we think of it as that, and to kids it's just a world.
Yep.
Right. But you have the travel, you have the neurodiversity, you have the biology of the animals and and also just the different worldviews and stuff like that, and the facts. There's just so many things that work so symbiotically together. It's not forced.
And we rewrote it several times.
I love that.
I had a lot of people work on it because I had no confidence that me and Jenny's story with our children would would translate the same way. And so, gosh, I went to people in London, people in Bali. I think one of the dev writers, I'd spend hundreds of dollars at a time because it was only a few thousand words. And I'd say, I just, nobody's going to want to hear it my way. So create a whole different story. And then I'd take that and I'd send it to a ghostwriter and say, what do you think about this? And finally, my wife just sat down on the whiteboard and said, we were just so nervous to give our world into the internet right now. There's just trying to survive on Twitter by saying a lot of positive things and you know, and I'd stay completely off of Facebook for other reasons, more around security and things like that. But it's hard sometimes to tell the real story behind it. And so, yeah, I mean, we've got a foundation under us through the end of the year, and I've got a half dozen books that I plan on pushing out, and some of them I can't. Like we're finishing up our Yoshi book. My middle son wrote a book about, at around 8 years old, he noticed his friends didn't want to play in the same way, and they were losing their imagination and just what happens as kids grow up. And he was fighting against that. And acceptance is a huge, like the Yoshi changes colors, and there's some things in there that I was a little worried around could be interpreted as, you know, racial or skin colors, but really it was more around a Yoshi being ostracized and being given a no color, right? Well, how do you represent that with darkness, with black? And so there's a lot of stuff in that book coming. But so that one's fun because Disney won't even let me give that away for free, to my understanding, with fan fiction. And so I'm going to fight hard. Like I've got a watercolor artist from Ukraine that did the Bunker Venture, and he did all the watercolor art with Yoshi and everything. And it reminded me of like Yoshi's Crafted World, where they introduced yarn and things like that and crafty stuff. And I was like, all right, we're going to do this in watercolor. And so we've got so many books. Star Wars, I have a trilogy where they were young Jedi Knights that I'm having a graphic novelist do right now. And I'm just going to flood Disney and Nintendo and just say, come on, let me give it away for free. Or I don't know, I'll develop some strategy. Maybe they'll watch this and figure out I'm coming and send me an email and say, sure.
Let him release the Yoshi.
That's kind of cool.
You know,
I'm actually from Modesto, which is George Lucas's hometown, and I went to church with his sister. Fun fact.
So
Fun fact.
Access to Skywalker Ranch. I will be sending you some graphic novel stuff.
I wish.
Just toss him over the fence.
George Lucas was famous for taking people's ideas and seeing vision, and I would much rather send it to him than Disney, knowing that he doesn't own it anymore. But I feel like, again, there's so many blessings and so much serendipitous things happening in the last year. One of them is, you know, with the Star Wars lines around Rebels and all the stuff in Mandalorian, they put everything at this stopping place where there's so much excitement to figure out what all these new characters are going to do. And that's the exact time period that my books are written at. So that's why I think Disney will not let me put them out, because I've injected all their favorite characters into it. I'm telling a story that they probably don't want to tell. I have Ahsoka. I mean, everybody loves Ahsoka. What a great insert into the Star Wars world to bring, you know, that female presence. And I'm not going to waste that. I'm not going to waste Mandalorians either. My books are full of Mandalorians. So I think they're going to be quite upset with what I've made, but it should be fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Love Disney, but Disney sucks.
Nintendo is pretty bad about the intellectual property as well. They're pretty legendary.
Yeah. Well, you've got so many ideas, so you'll do something with that. Yeah. So that's really cool. Anything else? What else should we talk about? I feel like there's just like a million things.
There's a ton. I could go on for a long time. I'd love to get back with you guys in a month or two, because I have so many things that are coming out, and I'm devising publishing strategies right now. I myself publish. I'd love to get back with you and kind of do a follow-up, show you where we're at.
Yeah.
Are you?
Of course.
So as far as the books go, are you planning to publish on KDP?
Yeah, so for the Bunker Adventure, I already have an Audible book made. I already have a Kindle book made, ebook, published, print book, and Audible's already all done. It's just the publishing world was crazy at the time I was ready. I had originally planned to release this on Autism Awareness Day, the UN holiday, April 2nd. Yeah. And then I was going to release it on Earth Day. And it's not that there aren't options. It's that I don't quite know how I want to do it. And I've looked at self-publishing. I've got a lot of people providing me with guidance and mentorship around it. And I think maybe they're even frustrated, because I'll go through like lists of all the things I could do. And And I'll sit there on Twitter and look at like Shea Serrano and go, geez, why don't I just PDF this? He did it with Scrubs and come on, what's the other thing? The Office. I mean, how did he get fan fiction rights to that? He's able to just take a PDF and push it out on Twitter and people can buy it. And I don't like all the back office. I'm not here to make a lot of money. I'm not here. I mean, obviously I'm publishing the art weekly online and having people and taking their creative feedback to source a lot of the content art. That's not my goal. And so I'm fascinated to think in the next couple weeks or months what kind of options might come to me to publish in a different way. And there's a lot of articles on that right now. Publishing world's kind of turned upside down, and there's new opportunities to maybe publish more for the benefit of the audience and the author, and not maybe, you know, some other things.
Yeah. I mean, what I work with, it's a company called Indie Media Group. And they just go based off of Instagram account marketing, and they have a website, and they publish on KDP, and it's not that hard, and you have complete say. You do get more money, you get a better share. So and that's just, you know, things are just getting started with that, and there are going to be more opportunities and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm all for it. You know, I'm not against traditional publishing at all. Yeah. But I think there are just some things where it's just like, I think you got to do your own thing. And
and that's the
more
thing,
people do that.
Yeah. And I wanted to test the waters. I'm a very hands-on person, and I tend to get very involved with things, and that's not possible doing what I'm doing. There's animation. There's so many worlds that I've touched in, and I have professionals helping me with. But the publishing side of things, I've always worked on blurb.com. I print all my books on there, and I read them at home with my kids and in schools. And so I have a wonderful lady right now helping me to format them for that content where it can get out to KDP. It can get out. You can have them publish. You can take different books and say, this one is only on Amazon. This is here. And there are different audiences, and it's hard to create an animated book and monetize that, I found out as well. And that's why I put it out this week is, man, if I could just bring some smiles to some kiddos, to some families that maybe watch the video and can have a different perspective of how they can enable the creativity in their children, then that's better. I mean, people warn me, I don't know what I'm doing. They're like, listen, you publish this. Some publishers, if you publish any form of the content, even if you still have ebook and Audible and all that, they're never going to publish you. And I don't care. I'm just getting stuff out, you know. Now I should care at some point, and that's why I have advisors, but
well, it made me smile.
Excellent.
Yeah. Ditto. Cool. Well, I think we'll maybe call it there. I mean, unless you have anything else you want to say, I definitely think we'll do a follow-up. Robin will be back.
Yeah.
All right. It's a deal. That leaves all my little trailers in my brain thinking of talking about other things. I'll put them all together and we'll organize it a little better. I'll do a better part on my end this time.
Oh no, you're fine. I feel like we like the free flow of like a conversation, right? Because even if we could think of like a million questions, there's still going to be stuff that we don't even think to talk about, you know? And the reason we call this YGBC talks is because we're just talking, you know? So for us, like, this is a cool opportunity. It's been really cool talking to you. Like I said, like hearing you actually say it like out loud, and you have, you know, more like time to say it. It's been really cool to learn even more about it and just like the background.
Well, this has been important for me. Thank you guys. I've been creating, you know, I left work in a mess, you know, just mentally, and so I've been inside this house for a long time, making little small runs, but not connecting with the old world. And this is the first time, and I don't know, it's kind of liberating. It's fun to be able to talk about all the stuff I'm working on now that I don't know if things are fully open up in the world, but I'm starting to open up a little more to go back out into it. So thank you.
Awesome.
Totally. Yeah. So we'll post links to the YouTube and the Twitter and as many things as we can think of.
Thank you.
And make sure you're following at YG Book Club on Twitter, and also at Studios by. Kurt, what's your handle?
It's info sprinkles.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's interesting.
Info, is it like info_sprinkles? Yeah, okay. So make sure you're following all three of those accounts for updates on the projects, and we're going to be continuing to, you know, help you share like the art and the concept and the progress. So keep people aware about, you know, all your cool projects and how they're developing. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I think we will definitely reconvene and hear more from how things are going.
Well, thank you guys for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So I guess we'll do like a quick little housekeeping. Kurt, if you want to like hop out, that's fine. Sure. Okay, everyone say bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Kurt.
Bye. Cool. Okay. So great guest today. Oh, cool.
Oh,
hey,
thank
SK.
you. We had a lot of Kurt brought in a lot of new friends with him today. Thanks, guys, for coming, stopping by.
Yeah. If you are new here, please subscribe to the channel. We will have Kurt back on, as we just said, and we will have more YGBC talks. So
our last live stream of the month. Let's go ahead and plug that one.
Yeah. So the official meeting, and that's the other thing we'll link the articles because we mentioned them, and we will link the ones we're going to be releasing this week, which are really exciting. So anyway, there's no book for the month for the Yang Gang Book Club. We are just doing our free online articles that are different voices and topics around neurodiversity. So find those links there. It's much less reading in that way, but still plenty to talk about.
Yes.
So that meeting is this coming Saturday at, do you want to say it, Megan? What time is it? Is it still
at 4? Our usual time? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Yes. Okay. So I was like, I just felt like I had to say that.
You guys, we're a little out of it today.
Yeah. Third live stream this month. We're getting better.
Second this week.
I know.
So we're having a very special guest coming on. Twitter is really cool, guys. You get to interact with people that you never would have interacted with in real life. So we're having, through Twitter, we met a really cool, what we call Own Voices author who will be coming on our live stream.
Yes. And so we will be announcing that in full either tomorrow or Monday. Oh, look, we have a cool comment. I love this group. Oh, that's awesome. Kurt turned me on to Yang Gang long ago. Or Yang. I have faith in our future with the young folks leading the way. Oh, that's so sweet. I appreciate that. We're glad to have you. Please come back. So that's the main thing. Next Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. my time, Pacific time. We could just say 4 p.m. Megan's time, 1 p.m. my time. Opposite sides of the country.
Yes.
Please make sure you're here for that, and also read the articles. We'll link all of them in the.
Yes.
So you get an early look at the next ones. And then I guess the other thing is just talk. We call it talk now. Tyranny of Kindness. Where is my book? I'll go get it. I have it.
I have my So this is mine. It doesn't have a cover. It's a cool hardback version because it was cheaper in hardback for some reason. It's Tyranny of Kindness.
This is the more common.
Yes, exciting thing. Teresa Finiciello actually is on Twitter now. She joined Twitter.
Oh, perfect timing.
Yes.
I wonder if we influenced that at all.
I know. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, we're reading that by her. It is also sold out on Amazon. I think we also had a hand in that. So you can only get it through like thrifty sites, used bookstore sites, which is also cool because you can support indie bookstores as well through that. So I think thriftbooks.com is one, bookshop.com is another, and then abooks. .org, and then abooks is also one.
So
I
if
think
you are
there's
having
still
trouble
copies
finding
left.
it, yeah, there were a lot. It's just that you got to get it from an indie store, and you don't know what the shipping is going to be like on that. So please, if you're interested in participating in next month's programming with Scott Santens, would you say Scott Santens? With Scott Santens, and the author of the book, which we have not done yet. Okay, so this is the first time. Please get the book as soon as you can and start reading it. It is like, it's not like a light read. Let's just put it that way. Like,
it's pretty,
a bit of homework, but
it's a thick book. And it's really the longest one we've read so far. Yeah, it's the longest one we've read so far.
The subtitle is Dismantling the Welfare System to End Poverty in America. I don't think we said that. So yeah. So it's got a lot.
Yeah. Also, I do want to tell you guys, it was written the year I was born. So it is a little like not outdated, but it's a lot has changed. So it's definitely interesting to kind of keep that in mind as you're kind of reading it.
Right. But she does like include dates and stuff. So yeah. So please get your book. And I guess the last thing I can think to plug is Wednesdays, because we're still trying to make people aware about
Wednesdays
our fun new programming on Wednesdays. On Wednesdays we write. Hashtag Wednesdays we write.
Yes.
Hashtag Yang Gang Pens. Hashtag Universe. We have a lot of hashtags. The main one is just come on Wednesday. Come to the YG Book Club page on Twitter. We around noon Eastern time. We release a creative writing prompt, and if you participate and you please at least do like Wednesdays we write and tag us. Actually, kind of the main thing is that you tag us with whatever you do. The idea is that it's not perfect, it's not polished. We're all doing it together and sharing our words and our thoughts. And you can do that, and we will retweet your work. And also potentially the next time we host our Yang Gang story time, we will also read your work if you would like us to. So it's a fun thing. People are participating, and the feedback has been really great. So if you're interested in writing,
and we have a very extra special one this Wednesday. So make sure you guys stop by specifically this Wednesday. There's a little hint.
Great neurodiversity related prompt this week. So yes, sounds great. Thank you everyone for being here.
Thanks for coming.
Loved it. Awesome, YG. Awesome talk, guys. Great talk, guys.
Great talk. Great talk.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Signing off. See you next time. Bye.